I interviewed 100 entrepreneurs who built companies and successfully sold them. And it was eye-opening because I'd start every conversation the same way. Tell me what it felt like when you sold the company. And they'd all say, it was great. It was the American dream. And I'd say, I don't feel that way at all. And they'd all say, guess what? Me either. It was like a death in the family.
Wow.
I felt like I'd lost all sense of purpose and identity. I made massive sacrifices I would never redo again. I got all this money, but I lost my marriages. I have no relationship with my kids. All these sacrifices people made for money. And it was the very beginning of this idea that we better know what money is for. Because everyone I spoke to who had it had massive regrets about what they'd had to do to make it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's was a life-changing event.
Starting your route to retirement.
Welcome to the Guided Retirement Show. I'm Dean Barber. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that this podcast is probably one of the most exciting podcasts that I've done. And we're going to be speaking today with a gentleman that many of you may not be familiar with, but once you hear this podcast, you're going to want to do some research and you're going to want to read his books, and you're going to want to be on the lookout for a new book that he's writing. We're going to be speaking with Joe Duran. He's the managing director of Goldman Sachs, and he is the head of Goldman Sachs Personal Financial Management. He didn't get here by accident. Joe Duran entered the country, the United States, at the age of 20 with $200 in his pocket. He worked his way through college. He started a business. He sold a business at the age of 34, wrote his first book, and has created one of the premier wealth management forums and formats in the country that is only available to a select group of advisors. And I am blessed to be a part of Joe Duran's network and partnering with Joe and his company. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoyed the conversation with Joe Duran. So, Joe Duran, I've had the pleasure of knowing you and working alongside you, obviously from a distance, because you're in Newport Beach, I'm in Kansas City. We're in the same industry.
We'd be from a distance, even if we're both in Kansas City right now, I have a feeling. So
I think you're right. Yeah, due to COVID-19, and obviously I am working in my home office right now. We had an exposure over the 4th of July where a family member came down with COVID that was visiting. Fortunately, nobody else in the house got it. So kind of crazy stuff. But Joe, I want you to take our listeners back to, where you came from. How did you get to the point that you are today? But let's go back to the beginning. You came into the United States when?
1990 or thereabouts. I was a teenager and had $200 in my pocket and had been traveling around the world. I grew up in Zimbabwe. That's where the accent is from. And had a very broken family life. Grew up in what was Rhodesia, then became Zimbabwe. And grew up in the middle of a civil war until I was 12 in a white-controlled country for half of my childhood. And then it became democratic country called Zimbabwe. And my school, all the wealthy white kids moved to Australia, South Africa, here to the United States, or went to private school. My parents had very little money. And so my school of 700 kids went to all of a sudden 650 black kids and 50 white kids. Maybe it was 30 or 40 total in the entire high school. And so it was a heck of an education and an eye-opening experience because I think on two fronts. One, the unreliability and unpredictability of life. And second, the fact that we're all human beings, no matter what color skin we have, which I would not have known growing up in what was a very racist country and then having to see the change and experience the change. So it was a really unusual childhood. When I left, I had to support myself since I was 11. So I worked selling hot dogs at 11, and by the time I was 18, I was working night production at a factory and making my own money as a DJ as well on the weekends, as well as going through high school. and then traveled the world working throughout. Paid my way through college. Ended up graduating at St. Louis University, but along the way I studied in Madrid and met my wife of now almost 30 years, hard to believe. And
Congratulations.
yeah, and have three amazing daughters. Uh, the range in age from 22 and 19 all the way down to 12. And all from the same woman. I have to add that if you're from Newport Beach, California, or Laguna Beach, California, the assumption is it's a second wife, but no. Jen was determined to have another one, and it's been an amazing voyage. You know, I came here with $200, paid my way through college, started with a very small advisory firm that we sold to General Electric when I was 34 years old.
So let's back up to this
Yeah,
this
sure.
coming here with $200, okay?
Yeah.
And so um, first of all, why did you choose the United States? Why not Australia, New Zealand, where so many other people went? Why the United States?
Well, I grew up watching a TV show called Dallas, and that TV show had a character called J.R. Ewing.
Yep.
You have to be older to remember the show, but we'd watch it on a black and white TV, moving the antenna so we could get the picture. And I just said to my parents when I was like 14 years old, you know, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to be like J.R. Ewing, and not in the bad way, but just being this person who lived in big business and was hugely successful. And I was an awful student. My parents were like, well, I don't know how you're getting there. I don't know how you're going to make that happen. But that sounds like a very big dream. And lo and behold, that's why America was always the ultimate destination for me. It was always the shining beacon of where you went and where the streets were paved with gold. I got here, I found out when I bought my first $6 hot dog at the old TWA airport in New York City. I was like, wow, $6 for a hot dog and a Coke. That's like a huge percentage, 3% of my current net worth. But anyway, that's America was always the place that you grew up wanting to be
Right.
a part of, you know.
And so you then started at St. Louis University?
Yeah.
And and why St. Louis University? What was
Well,
the
actually, I started at school here, and then when I studied abroad, I went on the St. Louis University program in Madrid, and candidly, it was just what was available in Madrid when I got there, and so when I transferred back, I just finished at St. Louis University, and it was a remarkable experience because I had started my journeys in America on the West Coast. And the people in California were very, very different, most especially up at Berkeley, were very, very different than the people in the Midwest.
yeah.
It was, I know that I could never, ever have accomplished what I've accomplished in this country without having that Midwestern education, because no matter where you go, no matter how it's voiced, no matter what the political opinion, the core of America in every city shares a very similar value system, but it's most evident in the Midwest. Like
Right.
when you are at school playing rugby against KU in St. Louis, you get to meet the driving values that really drive everything. So, you know, what I found, whether you're in Los Angeles or whether you're in New York or whether you're in Kansas City, the people are driven in very similar values. It's a very family-based, values-based culture, and I couldn't have worked out better. And frankly, the people were incredibly welcoming. But I could never have imagined St. Louis was not a place I'd even heard of, really. But that's how I ended up there. I just had been studying there. I wanted to study in Madrid, and St. Louis U had a program there.
Well,
So
that's so kind of a fate deal that got you to St. Louis University.
you got it, yeah.
So then, okay. So how did you decide on the financial services industry? How did you think what was it that said, oh, this is the direction I think I want my career to go?
I wish I could tell you that I had a burning passion for it, but it was a total fluke, as most of life is. I was studying marketing, and I thought, boy, I don't feel like I'm learning anything at all, and I should get something that actually feels like it has substance. I hated accounting, so I didn't have the talent to do computer science. So I'm like, well, I'll do finance. That was it. So I got a degree in finance and marketing, and then I thought, well, I know how to sell. I know a little bit about money, so it seems like I should be in money, in investing. And so my wife was from California, my girlfriend at the time, and we drove up and down the West Coast. It was the early 90s, 92. We just had a pretty significant recession in 1990. The stock market had done very poorly, and nobody was hiring in our industry. So I literally drove up from San Francisco in my wife's car because I had very little money, all the way down, just cold calling money managers and getting referrals from them for other money managers. And I ended my trip down in San Diego. In the meantime, I was interviewing for a 3M job, which I was offered, and a fast track management program where they were going to pay me $60,000 and fast track me to management. My last visit was to a guy called Bob Doty, who was the chairman of a very small 30 or $40 million RIA in San Diego. And I said, look, I want to get into the financial services business. And he said, well, I'll offer you minimum wage. And I said, I'll take it. And that was it. It was a pure coincidence. I didn't really have a passion for it at the time, but I did that, and we did that for about 9 years. We grew it to several $1 billion.
What was the catalyst for that, Joe? Because that's an incredible story. What was it that grew that from 30 or 40 million to several billion?
I've always been very fortunate in identifying where I think things are headed, and business success relies on two really important things. Number one, you have to be willing to do the work. But secondly, it's really helpful if you're in front of a big wave. And I've seen this throughout my life that the people who succeed are smart enough to get in a place where there's, to use a parable here from California, if you're going to try to surf, you need a board, you need to know how to use it, but you also need waves. And you don't have control of the waves, but you can have control of where you go and when you go. And so I was very fortunate that I identified when this firm used to go in and out of mutual funds. It was a timing firm. And I didn't really love that strategy, but what I did love is the idea that people who owned mutual funds needed help and advice about when to buy them and sell them, how to allocate across asset classes. And at the time in the early 90s, there were no easy solutions for that. So we built
the computer systems at that point didn't really exist.
No, everything was an Excel spreadsheet. It was the old dial-up internet modem where things would slowly scroll out. Nobody on this call probably even remembers that.
Or you get the giant books of the Morningstar reports.
Exactly. Yeah. And so advisors would sell a mutual fund to their client, but then they wouldn't really talk about how to allocate across. It was very complicated to do. So we built a firm that said, look, most advisors want to provide advice to their clients across broader asset classes, but don't have an easy way to do it. So we built a firm that helped independent advisors deliver across fund families. We were the first mutual fund supermarket where you could mix fund families and build allocations, and we would do the allocation for you completely. And we would debit the fees, we would do all the work, and we'd work with the advisor to build portfolios for clients. That business really took off. We're in front, as I mentioned, of a very big wave of the move for advisors to go independent, and they needed platforms or solutions that would help them do that, which is what we built.
Interesting. So you didn't. This wasn't Joe Duran as the independent financial advisor gaining billions of dollars. This was Joe Duran, entrepreneur, solving a problem that the industry had, and then and other financial advisors that wanted to use your system.
Exactly right. And then about 6 years in, we started acquiring those firms because they would use our platform for everything. We're like, hey, do you want to just join? That we actually were asked, can we just join you? And we said, sure. And so that's how we built an advisory firm that had both independent firms that used our platform and advisors that were part of our firm. And so I'd spend a lot of my time, especially in the beginning, meeting with clients of those advisory firms because they wouldn't know how to describe what we did. So I would actually meet with the clients and talk about how we would help the advisor to do a better job managing across their portfolios, managing the risk, rebalancing, which in those days was really complicated. We would do it all and make it easy so that the clients were always at their target allocations, but the advisors wouldn't even know how to describe it because it didn't exist at the time. So I had to come in, meet with clients. So we built that business by 2001. We sold that to General Electric. So I'd been working for about 9 years.
So how did this work out? I'm having a hard time envisioning this. I got this 20-something-year-old kid from Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
right? That is telling me how to do all this stuff. How did you get and gain the trust of the financial advisor community at large at such a young age?
Well, I had one advantage. My accent gives me 20 IQ points I don't deserve. So people would hear my accent and assume I knew a lot more than I actually did. Second, we had really smart people who actually we had CFAs and people that I hired that actually did the work. So I was really, the one really important thing that I've always been very fortunate is attracting brilliant people and creating the context for them to do brilliant work. I always just view a good leader and business leader understands your success, if you're really going to go beyond yourself, beyond being a sole practitioner, you have to create. I have a very simple mission statement, and we actually just recapped this with my team yesterday. My job is to help brilliant people do brilliant work. And so create the environment where I attract brilliant people and also create an environment where those people are able to do the most amazing work possible. And so I always had, even though I was 24 years old, I had Bob Doty, who's a PhD from University of Chicago, who was validation for myself. We had a 50-year-old CFA who ran the portfolios so that I was nothing more than a Colonel Sanders poster boy initially. I, of course, was helping to run the business. I made a lot of mistakes early on, most especially when we got to our first $1 billion, which at the time was a lot of assets. I was 27 years old, 28 years old, and we had a huge party at the Beverly Hills Hilton Hotel where they had the Oscars at the time, or the Golden Globes, and we had this huge bash, and we had not invested enough in operations. We had really bad year. We ended the year at $1 billion, but our business did not do well in between. And you learn a lot by realizing, you know what, I don't know it all. I've got to surround myself with people different than me who have an attention to detail, because I'm not an attention to detail kind of guy. And so you learn, and most importantly, you have to approach everything with humility to say, what if I'm wrong?
Right.
And I've been very fortunate that I get reminded very often by many people around me how frequently I'm wrong. But most importantly, I'm willing to listen no matter where I sit in the organizational chart. So obviously we had this amazing success with I'm 34 years old now when we sold. I started I think I was 24 or 25 after college because I started a little late. And we sold this thing for 120 million, which at the time seemed like it was a life-changing amount of wealth, obviously, for a guy with $200. We had partners and all the rest. So we shared that around a group of people. But it was a life-changing event, and it really opened my eyes to the next voyage that I took. So it was really very important and eye-opening in a couple of ways. One, when you get to multi-millions of dollars, and I'm not doing this to boast, but just to share that when you suddenly have the choice to do whatever you want, not out of a need for survival, which certainly the first company I built was because I had to survive. I had to pay the bills. I had daughters that I wanted to have a nice life. But all of a sudden, when you have choice in your life, it's not always great. When you get to the end result, and I'll just share, Dean, an interesting story. I had a 2-year non-compete. Very early on, I realized I was not cut to be a part of General Electric, even though I had a 5-year contract. I just wasn't happy. And so I came home to my wife and I said, honey, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, thank God you've been an ass since the day you sold the company. And I said, well, what am I going to do? She's like, whatever you want. You're 34. Well, interestingly enough, even though people should think that I should be ecstatic and really happy, I wasn't. I was really lost, felt really, really almost borderline depressed. And I'm not a depressed human being. I know a lot of people suffer from that. Wasn't my case.
So you couldn't see yourself retiring and just loving
no
life.
way. no way. And I was 34, and I would go to coffee at Starbucks. I'd be like, I would just feel lost. And so I thought I'll write a book. I went to graduate school. I got graduate degrees from both Columbia and New York and Berkeley. But in the meantime, I wrote a book, and I interviewed 100 entrepreneurs who'd built companies and successfully sold them. And it was eye-opening because I'd start every conversation the same way. Tell me what it felt like when you sold the company. And they'd all say, it was great. It was the American dream. And I'd say, I don't feel that way at all. And they'd all say, guess what? Me either. It was like a death in the family.
Wow.
I felt like I'd lost all sense of purpose and identity. I made massive sacrifices I would never redo again. I got all this money, but I lost my marriages. I have no relationship with my kids. All these sacrifices people made for money. And it was the very beginning of this idea that we better know what money is for, because everyone I spoke to who had it had massive regrets about what they'd had to do to make it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's was a life-changing event for me to go, okay, how we live matters. You know,
how long did it take for you to do those 100 interviews with successful
entrepreneurs? It took me about 18 months to write the book. It was my second book. It's still in publication today. And it basically shares the 20 things you need to know if you're going to build a successful business. The second half of the book is about selling it and how you need to adjust your mental frame. But the most important thing is that the business is not your baby. It does not care about you. And that is very hard to understand the first time you build a business. Having built a second one that was significantly bigger, my attachment to it is very different. But most entrepreneurs, again, don't get the good fortune of building two. They build one, and they wrap their own identity around this thing that they've built, and it actually limits the success of that business in two ways. Number one, you don't free the control broad enough to allow for other people to do great work. And second, you don't create the environment for yourself to be balanced and flourish, and that limits your ability to make the best possible decision. And so, again, great businesses should be driven by, unlike a child that you hope loves you forever, business has absolutely no feelings for you. But it is remarkable the amount of entrepreneurs who believe that they are a reflection of their business, when in fact their business should be a reflection of them. And so those lines can blur and can cause you to limit your own success and your own happiness.
So do you think, Joe, that 18 months of the interviews with these CEOs, successful entrepreneurs exiting their business, and the lessons that you learned from them, was that a fulfilling time for you? Did you feel lost while you were doing that, or was that something that was filling a void for you?
It was filling a void, but at the same time, you cannot fill the void of a lack of purpose. And for me, I was just digging around, trying to figure out what can I take from this. And I took one thing above all else. Man without purpose, or woman without purpose, is naturally going to feel lost. We are made and put on this earth to accomplish something. And it doesn't matter what it is, if you don't have a mission and a purpose that gets you up every day, then you are going to feel lost because you're not heading in any particular direction.
And that's a sickening feeling, right? I mean,
yeah. What am I doing this for? And I am not a human being who's here to simply take. Now, there are people who love to say, I'm here to be the greatest golfer in the world, and I tip my hat to them. I know that for me, I am, as a friend of mine, we were hiking in the mountains in the midst of this, and this was an enlightening moment. He said to me, Joe, some people are meant to sit on an island sipping Mai Tais, and some people are meant to be paddling to that island. You are a guy who needs to paddle to the island, and it's true. Like, I am not made to sip Mai Tais on the beach. I love to do it once in a while, don't doubt that, but I recognize I like to know that I'm contributing in some way to furthering mankind in some way.
Okay.
And that has been always my motivating factor, you know?
Okay, so let's talk about this psyche, and the things you talked about, the sacrifices in life that people made. They lost their families, they lost their wife, maybe estranged children, all for money, and that in and of itself has to be an empty feeling, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you know, uh, I'll tell you a quick story about me, and I don't think I've told you this before, but when my kids were I've got 5 kids, and the youngest is now 19, and the oldest is going to be 30 here in a couple of months. But all of my kids were pretty young at this point in time, and I was trying to grow a business much like you were, and I hired a coach, and this coach asked me, she says, "Okay, I want you to write down where you're going to be in 5 years and where you're going to be in 10 years." And so I start writing all this stuff down, and she goes, "Wait a minute. No, you're writing about your business." She goes, "I want to know about you, your personal life. Where are you going to be? How old are your kids going to be? Where are you going to be living? What are you going to be doing?" I broke down and started crying, and I said, "Oh my God, in 10 years, I'm going to have one of my 5 kids left at home. I can't tell you the names of my kids' teachers right now. I'm so busy doing what I do." And for me, that was a pivotal moment where I said, "You know what? This business isn't the most important thing in my life. My family's the most important thing." And so I had to restructure everything and reprioritize my life and where I was spending the most valuable piece of my time and who was I giving it most to. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, but many of these men and women, they didn't get to that point until it was too late.
Look, you're hitting on something really important here, which is the reprioritization that needs to occur. I would suggest there's been a lot of research done on this. And a fellow graduate of UC Berkeley, who's a Nobel Prize winner in psychology and economics, um, wrote about this particular subject because he'd been studying happiness and wealth and financial decisions and realized happiness is not the ultimate goal for every human. They say it is, but yet we constantly make sacrifices all the time for something far more important. And that something far more important is satisfaction with the way you live. That in fact, narrowing the gap between the person you think you want to be and the person you are is what drives happiness. Happiness is a temporary state of mind that can come with a really good old fashioned and a nice steak, or a great hug from your kids. You will feel happy. And just as surely, your happiness will disappear the minute that you find out your car's been driven into a ditch by one of your kids, right? It's a feeling. Satisfaction is a lasting thing. And satisfaction means that you are living up to the life that you set for yourself, to the standards and things that you wanted, the decision you made to say, I want to be a person who is in my kid's life, that 10 years from now, I am a caring and loving dad, that I
Right.
am a caring and loving husband, that I'm healthy, that I run a successful business. And how you prioritize that, understanding that all of that, accomplishing that, will allow you to have those feelings of happiness more frequently. But even if they don't occur, because lots of bad things happen, that you will still be proud and satisfied with who you are every day, that is what lasts.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, you have to do the work or go
Right.
through a process to say, what matters to me? And unfortunately, we so seldom are taught at any point in life that it is for each individual completely different. And there's no right or wrong. We're all told, go to the best school, make the most money, retire with the most amount of assets, get a beautiful spouse, have perfect kids. Those are the markers of happiness, but they aren't.
No.
Some people being a great carpenter and being fantastic at it and being single and living in Singapore is their thing. Good for them. Uh, what I guess I'm sharing is we are individually and personally responsible for our own lives. And so we should be responsible for understanding what gives us meaning, what matters to us, and then make choices that align with that intention. It's so easy to blame others, to be a victim. But what I have found in my incredibly fortunate life is that your life is the sum of your choices. And that's a famous Albert Camus quote, that things are going to happen and you will have no control over them. But you will always have control over how you react. You will always have a choice about how you think about it. And I'm working on a new book called The Thin Line. And the thin line is on this very simple concept that the difference between misery and happiness, or success or failure, is the thin line about whether life is happening to you or for you. And your perspective about whether you are a victim of circumstance or a shaper of your life is the difference between being completely happy and owning your life or not. And
It's
so for me,
powerful.
it's a really interesting idea. Did this bad thing happen to me or for me? Because if it happened for you, you know, the awful upbringing that I had, the hard things that have happened in your life, then you're going to sit back and say, what can I learn from this? Why did this happen? Why is this happening for me? And it changes everything. That simple question, that simple word, to or for, either makes you a victim or gives you complete control of your life. It's just an interesting idea that for me relays itself in almost everything in life. And so for me, again, I've I know I could be simply winning 1,000 lottery flips, but a lot of times it hasn't felt that way in life. I've just chosen to say every time something bad happens, it's happening for a reason.
Right. So here you are now, and we're gonna back up in time again. So you're what, 37 years old. You had, 2 or 3 years that you
Yeah,
wrote your book. You interviewed these people, and I have to think that it changed your perspective on life and what was truly important in life, which is what we're talking about today. And then that is what really led your vision to your creation of United Capital. So I want
yeah,
to go to your creation of United Capital, your vision for not just helping the financial advisors find the right asset allocation. What I think you learned there was that that is a commodity. There's something far more important that
right.
a financial advisor should be, more than just an asset allocator, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Look, my view is very simple. In order for anyone to listen to advice, they must be understood. And what does that mean to be understood? It means that you have to, if you're going to listen to anything I have to say, I have to know what you care about. I have to know what matters to you. I have to know the things that keep you up in the middle of the night. And most importantly, I have to talk about the things you care about. And money and investing is not one of them. We had a very simple idea, which is rather than focusing on people, helping people die rich, let's make sure they live richly because money is fuel. And you have to think about money as fuel. It is a resource. The more of it you have, think about if you're driving, the more fuel you have, the more choices you have of where you can go. Now, you're going to need to stop and get more gas along the way, but you're not going to view getting gas as the destination. It is simply refueling. An advisor's job is to help you make the most of your voyage, not to just make sure you have fuel in the tank. And what does that mean? It means understanding where you want to go and what you want to do and how you want to do it, because life is filled with trade offs. If the advisor doesn't know, is it more important for you to make more money or spend more time with your kids? If we don't know how you would trade off your limited time, which is what is not a replenishable asset, then how can we possibly give you good advice? How is it possible for anyone to tell you how to invest your money if they don't know what you care about?
but that
And
was
so
a
we
but that at that point in time, Joe,
revolutionary at the time.
that
Yeah,
that was something that nobody even talked about, because
no.
think about this. When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen,
Uh,
right? And you had all these people in the financial services industry that their uh, superpower was their secret sauce on how they managed money, and so it created this uh, this I guess view from the public that the financial advisor's job is just to get me a better rate of return.
that's correct. Yeah,
And so your whole concept here turned that on its head.
yeah.
And but what it did was, it didn't just change financial advisors' lives. You've changed this idea has changed the lives of thousands, if not millions, of
Yeah,
Americans that have been fortunate enough to work with advisors who subscribe to that concept of trying to help a person live richly and
yeah.
really get fulfillment out of their life.
Well, we call it financial life management. This is more than investment management. It's more than financial planning. It's financial life management. And and again, just to go back to why that's the case, I interviewed 100 people and they all thought, if only. So what do we all think? If only I had $1 million. If only I had $2 million. If only
Oh,
X, Y, or Z happened, I will be happy. That's not the case. There's never ending amounts of if onlys that you will come up with, and they will not change your happiness. You'll
but
get there.
the
The
regrets, Joe,
regrets
had
matter. Yes, you'll
they
live
had
with those.
they had to be more of the family sacrifices, though, right?
That's
The
correct.
right they were successful in business, but they regretted the
Yes,
sacrifices on the family side, right?
exact.
And so
Yes.
that's where your vision says, okay, how do we help people identify that? So where did you start? How did you think about how are we going to help people identify this?
Well, I've always been a student of behavioral economics, and so I said, look, how do we create a way for people in a non-threatening environment to make trade-offs? And we know money only does three things. It helps you to avoid pain, take care of the things that you're afraid of, in other words. Second, it helps you to do the things that make you happy, provide enjoyment or happiness. And third, it helps you to take care of the people you care about. That's all that money does. And so we went to our advisors and we said to them, look, we want you to write down all the things that your clients can think of that they'll ever want as personal financial goals, the things that they say they want and that matter to them. We had about 250 items. And then we took a whole group of people and bundled them into groups. And we ended up with only 15 things, 5 for happiness, 5 for fear, 5 for taking care of others, commitment, and put them together and said, okay, is there anything missing? And these are things like, I don't want to be a burden to my family, or I want to educate the people I care about, or I want to grow as a human being. And so we literally went through this. We tested it. We found out that a few of the cards could be improved. And we've just recently retested a decade later. Nobody has come up with anything missing. So we managed to compress all of the desires people live for down to 15 cards. And then people literally prioritized it. And we did lots of tests on site, pilot tests, to see how does it happen? What's the sequence that should follow? As it turns out, you have to do it in exactly the right sequence. Otherwise, it clouds the results. But two things really happened that were amazing. Number one, we never found anyone who had actually articulated and put in writing what mattered to them. And number two, we'd never found a married couple who had ever actually spoken about and articulated what do we collectively agree we work for? What is
Yeah,
the purpose of our work? And I know you've done this exercise. I've
fascinating.
never sat down with anyone and found anybody who said, oh, no, we know. Here's our top 5 things that we work for, which is
Right.
amazing, right?
Right. No, it's more you see the husband looking at the wife and he's saying, I didn't know that was important to you. And she says to him, I didn't know that you cared about that. I mean, so what I find about that exercise, and you coined the phrase "an honest conversation." I look at it as a family prioritization exercise. Why are
Yes.
we here? Why are we doing the things we're doing? Why is it that what we do what we do, and what do we want the rest of our lives to look like? And I think that I really believe that we can shape our own future based on the choices that we make each day. And
Well, we know that's true. And Dean, as you know, every single financial plan that anyone has ever been given is wrong the day
of,
it is written.
of
It
course
is
it is.
simply a reflection of our best guess about the future. Nowhere in that financial plan does it show somebody getting cancer. Nowhere in that financial plan does it show exactly when your kids are going to get married and what it'll cost.
Right.
You have best estimates, but we know that life will not unfold that way. So then the question is, you're paying an advisor to manage your money, and they have no idea what it's actually going to do. And you're paying an advisor for a financial plan that's wrong the day it's written. what are you really paying an advisor for? Well, I would suggest the reason you pay an advisor is to help you optimize your choice making any given day. Because
Right.
the course corrections you're going to have to make as life actually unfolds cannot be done by a computer. It has to be done with the help and counsel of somebody who understands you, who knows what matters to you. And when you're making a decision that compromises your long term satisfaction, that they can say to you, as long as you are aware that taking that job in that different city will put at risk all these other things you said that matter to you. And if they choose to go ahead and do it in a non judgmental way, help them to make the trade offs to optimize that decision, which is all that matters because you're right. Your whole life is affected by how you make decisions. So the job of a really great advisor is to help bring truth and understanding and discipline to how you make those choices.
Yeah, and once I think the thing that is so exciting to me is once people take the time to sit down and work with an advisor who works in that capacity and have that conversation, the clarity that comes out of that is phenomenal.
And
Phenomenal.
and the control. Look,
Yeah.
there's something really powerful about understanding what matters to you and then taking action to get there. So
Yeah.
again, this is about no longer being a victim to circumstance. You are telling the universe, this is what I care about. You're telling the people that you care about, this is what I care about. And you are now putting yourself to accountability of making decisions that align with your intentions. And that is how you narrow the gap between what you think you want to be and who you are. That's how you narrow the gap. And that is what will bring you satisfaction and opportunities to be happy more often.
So this is what's fascinating, Joe, about what you've done. So when you think about the things that you're talking about here and the intimacy and how well I get to know my clients and other advisors that are part of your organization get to know their advisors. That's something that until you created what you did was pretty much exclusive to the ultra wealthy.
Yeah,
Where the ultra wealthy said, look, I've got this money and I'm not giving it to anybody until they understand me, right?
that's correct.
But the average, I'll call him the millionaire next door, has never thought that they had the right to do that. And our industry was ill equipped to do that. So what you
Well, you couldn't
basically,
do it. Yeah,
yeah,
you couldn't do it.
you've basically taken what was once available only to the ultra high net worth people and you've made it available to the masses, but still those people that are looking for it, they've got to find the right advisor. They've got to
Yeah.
find the advisor that works in that capacity. And I will tell you, because it's the way that I do it and all the advisors that are in my shop do it, it is uh a high intensity. There's a lot of work behind it. It's not a, I'm going to throw your money in these different accounts and go play golf and let's hope the market goes up. No, this is the true financial life management where, our conversations with our clients go on, multiple times throughout the year. It's not and that, so they're getting now for the first time the ability to get the same kind of treatment that the ultra high net worth people have gotten from the family offices.
That's correct. And also on an ongoing basis, making sure that we're staying on track. So we measure and track on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing on these priorities? So yes, look, the reality is if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of really good counsel and you have a lot of dedicated care that you can have. And that requires a lot of expense. So having the systems and tools that allow us to do this in a predictable and consistent way also allows us to do this for more people and at a level of client that is not at $100 million. And that's really powerful. That's a small component of it. I think about it in that context with even investing money and everything else that we do to say, how do we provide average, everyday, hardworking Americans the tools and systems to take advantage of the technology that's available to do things in a much more sophisticated way than would ever be possible today. So another example, you can do with investing now, create individually managed portfolios that are tax managed in individual stocks that replicate an ETF, but are tax efficient. You don't pay anyone else's taxes. That would have been unimaginable a few years ago for
Sure.
somebody with $200,000 or $500,000. Today, you can do that efficiently. So, we use our size now that we're at tens of billions of dollars. We have a lot of resources, especially as part of Goldman Sachs, to develop and invest on things that you get to use. As you know, you get access to all of this research and all this work and all this incredible technology spent to further your cause of helping individuals live a better life.
So I think that what we're going to kind of fast forward here, because you sold the company that you built, right, to Goldman Sachs. And at first,
just before you go on, I want to make sure we're clear. It's not just me. I have a whole team of amazing people that, I don't want anyone to think this was me, because I can tell you I would have built a hot dog stand by myself. So
right. Okay, so your company was sold, right?
Yeah.
So I think where I want to go with that, Joe, is that when people first looked at this deal, it was a head scratcher, right? Why would Goldman Sachs, the premier money manager on Wall Street, that has ignored the millionaire next door, right? That wasn't their market. That wasn't what they were looking for, right? Yeah. Why would they do this? But when you come down to the why, it's because they recognized that what you and your team at United Capital had created could be something that could be broadened out for the masses, therefore allowing even more people to experience what their ultra high net worth investors have experienced over the last several decades.
That's correct. Look, Goldman Sachs, their average client is 50 million plus. They had no way internally of understanding of how to access this market, but they're commercial and smart creatures. And they said, we know that most of the wealth in America is not with the billionaires, it's with millionaires, right, with hardworking entrepreneurs all over the country. And we don't have a way of working with that market. So we can try and figure it out, or we can buy one of the preeminent national independent firms that we believe I think they believed we were the best that there was available, and make sure that we have a team that can build out and provide the services to not just our clients, but the clients of really good, carefully selected independent firms. As you know, in order to be our partner, you had to go through a lot of review both ways.
Yes.
We had to pass your standards, but you had to pass ours. And our view is very simple. We're going to partner with only the finest advisors in the country to provide them the ability to have all of our tools and systems to go way beyond what we could have done at United Capital, because we now have resources to go way beyond what I could have done. To investment acumen have only been available to the wealthiest of clients. But as part of Goldman Sachs and as a partner of Goldman Sachs, I can bring a lot of that to bear here in a way that's really good for everyday Americans. And that's really exciting. That is a way for me to repay to this amazing country by providing things that are not available to everyone else.
So thank God the friend of yours on the top of that mountain as you were hiking convinced you that you should be the guy paddling to the island, right? And you're still paddling. I mean,
yeah.
And I still hear the passion in your voice every time I talk to you, and it's electric. I mean, it's energetic, and anybody that took the time to listen to the conversation that you and I have today that don't get that, Joe Duran is one passionate individual, and you're not doing this for Joe Duran anymore, right?
No, look, I can tell you with this last sale, this really is absolutely not about money anymore. For me, this is it's what I love. I love making a positive impact in the world. It is my driving force. It is why I wake up every day, because I am on this planet to make a positive impact, and I know no better way than helping people make great decisions, to take ownership of their life, to provide resources that are not available unless I walk this planet and help to make that happen. That's what I exist for. And it's rewarding and exciting without sacrificing my marriage and my kids, doing it in a very different way than we did the first go around. I always took vacations. I always took breaks with this building of this firm, but also we get a much bigger platform. I get to do things in a much greater way. So we've at the 1 year anniversary now, and I'm more excited now than I've ever been in my career, even though I don't own it anymore. I'm now
Right.
an employee just like everyone else. But to me, it's no less important what we do. And frankly, I think we now have the resource and ability to do it in an even bigger way. So that's exciting for me.
Well, and it's exciting for me to have the good fortune of knowing you and partnering with you years ago. And I'm so glad that our paths crossed. And I want to take just a minute and just say thanks for taking the time out of, I know, your very busy schedule to share who is Joe Duran and what drives you here on the Guided Retirement Show. This is a story that people need to hear. And here's just one last thing that you looked at our country when you moved to the United States and said there's opportunity, right? And I believe that there's opportunity for everybody in this country, but you have to go out and make it happen. It's not going to come to you.
Well,
And
look, the streets are not paved with gold, but
no,
no one's stopping you from doing whatever you want legally, ethically, to do the work, to build your own street and coat it with gold if you want.
yeah,
The reality is there is nothing stopping you from having the life you want. Literally nothing. There's no one on the other side saying you can't have it. That as long as you have a mindset that I'm going to make the pie bigger, I'm going to be a contributor to this planet and to this country, and all I want is my fair share. That if you have that mindset, you can do almost anything, and I'm living proof of it. Now, again, I could have just been incredibly lucky twice, but
no,
I kiss the ground every day that I get the good opportunity to do good things, be proud of what I get to do, and only possible in America. I can tell you, because I've traveled the world, there is no other country this could have happened in.
yeah, you didn't get lucky, Joe. You worked hard. And it's interesting because some people can look at the successful people and say, oh my gosh, they got lucky, right? They never it wasn't luck. It was
You need
never luck.
some luck. You need some
Well,
luck too.
but you
But you got to do the work.
you got to do the work. And it's and you got to not expect for somebody to give you something for
Look,
nothing.
they say you are lucky when opportunity meets preparedness.
That's right.
And every person with a great idea, that's 1%. 1% is inspiration, 99% is perspiration. So I've
Yes.
always believed I might not be the smartest, but I will be the hardest working,
Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to our continued work together. And congratulations on the success of your life and how you've impacted so many
Thank you,
others.
Dean. I very much appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Well, if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. What a great story about Joe Duran. I want you to make sure that you share this podcast with your friends, with your family. Get it out there to all the young people who think that, it's going to be easy to make things happen. This isn't a podcast that I think we got to learn about life, about passion. And I love the fact that Joe got the opportunity to do those 100 interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs and really understand that life's not all about money. There's far more important things in our lives than money. And as Joe said, the money is the fuel. Find yourself the right advisor. Look to the advisors of Barber Financial Group. That's exactly what we do. We do it exactly like Joe was talking about. We'd love to start a conversation with you and help you in any way that we can. Geographic boundaries don't exist. With the technology that we have today, we can help you wherever you live in the United States.
Investment advisory services offered through Barber Financial Group and SEC registered investment advisor.